Beautiful. Then I'm going to start recording, and I'll make the recording available at the end of the session. I see the last folks kind of filtering in. Ward, why don't you introduce yourself? And I guess the only other introduction I would say is following FHIR North, I reached out and I said, oh, please present this at this next step at our next Canadian baseline meeting that we can get you on, because I really do think a lot of you that are iGuide authors out there that are using the Canadian FHIR registry hopefully can take advantage of this more advanced feature.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sheridan. Thank you for having me and for giving me the opportunity to present this. So indeed, you could already create packages, of course, quite easy with Simplifier, but we've introduced something that we call Bake. That should give you more configurability on how you exactly want to create your package, make more features available that we previously didn't expose when making a package. And eventually this will also be a more general feature where we can have pipelines that you can run within Simplifier. So I have a small presentation. I'll mainly do a demo. Let me introduce myself indeed. So my name is Bart Wijstra. I am the product manager here at FHIR for all our data modeling tools. So that's Simplifier, Forge, FHIR Terminal. So if you have any questions, please always reach out to me. You can find me on Zulip or on email or on Twitter, as long as that lasts. So I think I have about 5 slides here, and just we'll go through creating a package generally in the simplest way in Simplifier, just by hitting the button, and then we'll do the same process when by using the new Bake pipeline. So we'll create the script to make our own package and configure that, and make sure that we generate snapshots and make other things in there. And then, so I'll show that first in the GUI, so in the cloud platform, just by clicking around. And then we can also show that on the command line for people who would like to automate this somewhere. And then a bit future outlook where we're going with this. And yeah, feel free to interrupt or ask questions at the end, whatever suits your question best. Good. So let's get started by just looking at how we always were able to create packages, as long as packages have been around. It's not that long within the FHIR community. Sheridan, do you think I should introduce FHIR packages quickly, or?
I am seeing some folks that may not have caught it on FHIR North, maybe just in like a minute or two. I think most folks have an intermediary, but it might be helpful.
I'll just open then maybe a recent presentation, maybe the FHIR North one. Well, I have another one here. I presented yesterday for HL7 Croatia, and I think there's some information in there. So yeah, this is not me, the picture, but this is Ewout, our co-founder and the CTO of FHIR, who was one of the original writers of the FHIR spec. So FHIR is a company that builds these tools that I mentioned, but also we do training, we organize FHIR Dev Days, we do consultancy. Yeah, if you need any help with FHIR, we try to make that easier. This is all stuff but let's, I was looking for this slide specifically. So when you have a FHIR development project, well, generally you start with some kind of use case that you think FHIR could help you achieve a better interoperability. And then you do all the organizational stuff, get the right stakeholders together. You start logical modeling, whether that's in the FHIR logical modeling framework or whether it's in like an Excel sheet, just making sure you know, okay, what are the different entities and what are their attributes and what are the data types, etc. And then you run into this FHIR build cycle where you make FHIR resources with Forge, for example, or FHIR shorthand. You build these resources, and then you run quality control over them, just validation.
Sorry, Anne, did you have a question?
Yeah, it didn't sound like Anne herself.
Yeah, you may just want to go on mute.
Thank you.
I may mute her and then just let me know if you need to be off mute, Anne.
Great. So you have your resources, you make sure you validate them all the time to make sure that they're actually sound FHIR and your examples adhere to your profiles, etc. Then you build human readable documentation around that, what FHIR calls implementation guides. And then once you're happy with both of them, you make releases out of them. And that's what FHIR has FHIR packages for. So this is the publish step, the third step here. Anytime you're ready to make a release of your FHIR specification available to your customers, you make a release of the computer readable artifacts, which all go in a FHIR package, and the human readable artifacts, which is the implementation guide. And you give that a version number over time. And when you collect feedback and you go again through the cycle to make improvements, you make multiple releases over time of these specifications. And as long as they have a name and version number, then your customers have something stable to build on and to use within their FHIR server for validation, etc., while you can build on the next release and make sure you have your hands. You don't interrupt anyone with their work when you make or you're building the next release. So FHIR packages are just nothing more than a kind of zip file where you take all the resources from the project, put them in a certain folder, in a certain format. And then that's a package that any FHIR tool understands and then can get the resources out to provide validation or any other things that they do with your resources. So I think that's just a brief introduction in FHIR packages. Then, yeah, let's see. So I have a project here that I also used at FHIR North. So this is Simplifier, as I mentioned, our cloud platform for building FHIR resources, collaboration platform to work together with your colleagues, but also a publishing platform to share this information to the wide world. And I'm just going to use my demo organization, Acme, here. So let me quickly find Acme here. So all you Looney Tunes fans know Acme Corporation, of course, and they, besides a lot of explosives, they have also a FHIR specification. And for FHIR North, I built this Acme Canada specification. And this one should not yet have any bake files. So we're just gonna make a new release of this specification. So we have some profiles here, a value set, some extensions, a capability statement, and there's a bunch of example data. And when we make a package, we just go to the packages tab here. I already made a package once, so the 001 version here. If I had not, I could create a completely new one from here. But right now, I'm just going to release the next version, like the 0.0.2 version. Just going to click the plus button there. This is where you normally end up as first tab. So I'm going to give this a version number, 0.0.2. It's published by Acme Corp. What has been changed since last time? Well, probably not a lot, but that's just for demoing here. You can give it a package description, but it's probably going to stay the same as my previous release. And then on the content tab, we have some customization options. So we can choose what our package looks like. But this is a limited set of choices. Not all of these things you want to play around with. Convert all resource to JSON. I would definitely keep that one on because it's basically mandatory in the package spec. You can choose to put resources in there which are not FHIR resources themselves. I don't think that's necessary because it's really meant for computers to process this package, and they only need the FHIR resource. But you can do some filtering. So we've provided a default filter here to only include active resources if you want that, so that it's filtering out any draft or retired resources. Is that the word? And then this one you want to keep on, basically move all the resources to the package folder and move all the examples to the examples folder. So that's just a structure within that zip file. But these default settings are fine. And you see there's only very limited options to tune this.
And the active resources, just because I
Yeah.
have you here, and it's been a question in my mind. I
Mhm.
think the intent is for this to also exclude in review, right? Profiles that are marked in the workflow state as in review, anything that isn't marked active.
Yeah, I think FHIR only has 3 statuses, which
Yeah.
is like draft, active, and retired. I'm not sure where you see the in review. Is that
So
an
I
extra?
know, like,
Yeah,
the reason I
there's-
bring it up is because, like,
Mhm.
we have, for instance, in some of our national specifications, we
Yeah.
were using the states that we use for the project management in Simplifier to
Oh, okay,
differentiate
yeah.
between emerging profiles that perhaps need more cycles and that are being piloted by jurisdictions,
Mhm.
from the profiles that may be more, have
Yeah.
gone through more cycles and revolutions.
Oh, great. Yeah, I wasn't aware that you were using that, but that's great indeed. So Simplifier has this support. Let's see if we can indeed find that. Let's see. So let's go to Canada here. Canadian Fire Registry. So you were using this in the
The
base?
Pan-Canadian
Okay.
patient summary,
Oh,
but it may be something that similarly we need to use in the baseline if we have, for example, profiles that have gone through less cycles of maturity.
yeah.
Yep.
No, you're completely right indeed. So there's we have the support for indeed adding more statuses on top of there, but they're still always mapped back to the 3 FHIR statuses.
And that's
Um,
effectively what the packaging setting determines. Okay.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so I think in this case, only published is of course is mapping to active in the official FHIR state of active. Can we see that somewhere? Oh yeah, here. Good. So yeah, so publish maps to active, and the other are drafts, and these are retired basically.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anybody else has run into it. It was just something that, we started to see in some of ours, but wanted to confirm it and call it out in case it's relevant.
Well, I'm very happy that you're using this. That's good. Yeah, but it's indeed looking at the FHIR status underneath. So the other ones are basically not set in the resources, but something Simplifier puts on top. Good. So let's release this 0.02 version. It's just running through a few steps, and then now we have a new version of Acme Canada. A few things that to note here. So all our examples are in here, all the profiles and stuff. Things that we do not have in here is, and that people are sometimes missing, is a .index.json file. You don't have to know about this file. It's a completely optional file that the IG publisher puts in the package, and it's in the package specification. It's also stated that it's optional, but as often happens, is optionality becomes mandatory as people start counting on it. So there's tools out there which will complain about not having the .index.json file. So that's something that we can do with the package baked pipeline. And what we can also see if we, for example, open our let's see, profile on device here. We can see when we look in the real XML or JSON that we only have the differential in here and not the snapshot. In principle, anyone who has the differential and all the dependencies can calculate the snapshot, but not every tool is able to do that, especially because there's basically only 2 implementations of snapshot generators, one in Java and one in .NET. Yeah, please.
Could you just briefly describe what differential and snapshot are?
Yeah, of course. I think it's more clear when you look here. So snapshot is the full resulting data model from piling on the core FHIR data model, so the core FHIR device in this case. And then I'm not sure if Canada has a profile on device. I think so, probably.
We do in the baseline.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So indeed, so it's building on top of that one too. So what we see in the snapshot is here, the core device in the FHIR spec, layered on top with all the constraints that Canada base has put on top of that, layered on top with all the changes that that Acme Canada specifically has put on top of that. So this is the full resulting data model, like your table definition. The differential is only what this specific profile has changed to its compared to its direct parent. So compared to the Canada baseline one, all we have done is add one more extension, or actually two more extensions. Yeah, and the hybrid is just showing.
Quick question.
Yeah, please.
So if I got it correct, so snap is your most recent constraints on top of the core, and your differential is actually the delta between your core and the customized profile we have created, right?
So you're right indeed. So the differential is the delta of the resource that we're looking at compared to its parent. Right. So yeah, and then the snapshot is just, okay, now that you have told me that you want to add these extensions, this I took the parent profile, I added these two extensions, and this is what I got. That's the full data model that we have now.
Right, and snapshot would be the most recent point in time.
Yeah.
Snapshot is the total result when you take all of the parents of your profile plus your own changes that are described in the differential, and it's everything. You know, this profile is based on Canada baseline, which is based on FHIR core, and it's the resulting structure all the way down.
Right. So, for example, if we would like to have some extensions for British Columbia, province of British Columbia. So we have the core, and on top of that, we have the FHIR baseline, and on top of that, we have the extensions for British Columbia. And that complete view would be a snap, right?
Yeah. When you calculate all those layers on top,
okay,
then the resulting data model you end up with is the snapshot indeed.
Yeah. Thank you.
And that's a very complicated process to actually make those. So it's actually convenient to give those to your users rather than them having to use tools that actually have it. Good. So we made those two observations on our second version of the Acme Canada project. Now it's time to have a look at what actually the bake pipeline will do. So we're just going to create our third package, the 0.0.3 package here, but we're going to do that by configuring our the entire script, how the package should be made. And we're going to do this with bake. So in our project, we have a button called bake. And in there, we already have a shortcut to create this package.bake.yaml file. So this is just kind of defining the pipeline for next time that we're going to make a package. So we're going to make that file, create it. We're going to fill in some details and make some choices on how to generate that package. We're going to quickly run that pipeline then to test whether it actually does what we want. And then we're going to make, this is running it. And then we're going to go through that wizard again to create a package and see that it's actually now using our package.bake file rather than some checkboxes where we have limited choices of configuring. Good, let's do that in real life. So here is my Acme Canada project again. I go to bake and I have a shortcut here to create my package.bake.yaml file. Not sure if you're familiar with YAML, but it's just like XML and JSON. It's another format, a text-based format, very common format. This is the default file that we've made. And it will already do a few things that are mandatory to create a package. So when you take all the resources from a project and you make a package out of that, you need to make sure that all the conformance resources, so profiles and such, live in the package folder within that zip file. And then examples should live in the package/examples file. And they should all be they should all be JSON files, even though FHIR can be XML or JSON. In a package, it should all be JSON files. And you should have a package manifest. Please. Did you want to jump in, Marsh? Or? Okay, I'll just continue. So you need to have a package manifest, which is giving some metadata about this package. And that needs to be in the package file.
Sorry, I got distracted.
Oh, no worry.
Yeah, you're saying something?
Oh, no, I was just checking whether you wanted to interrupt or not.
Yeah, there was an unmute. I think we're good.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So you define steps in here, and these steps can have different actions. There's some nice documentation on here on all the different things you can do within Bake. Where did you go? Oh, in my other tab.
I dropped it in the chat. It's
Oh,
from
perfect.
the Bake documentation hyperlink, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's some different options indeed here. That's the documentation on what we can do in here. But generally, you create an action, you give it a name that you want. This is completely how you want it. And then you can define some filters, like which resources do you want me to take? And then you can give it an action. You can give it an action, what to do with it. In this case, we're moving it. And then we can define kind of a pipeline with multiple buckets where we're moving something. So what we're saying in the first rule here is, okay, take all my conformance resources. So that's a generic term that takes all your structure definitions, value sets, code systems, capability statements, everything that's kind of FHIR calls conformance resources. And we're moving those to the package folder in a bucket that we call staging. I'm actually going to take out this filter for active, just kind of comment it out. So we take all the resources in this case. But this is already a way to show, like, you can filter on active resources that we also had that checkbox for, but you can also make much more complicated statements here. Like, this is just FHIR path statement. So you can say, I want active and draft resources, but not the retired ones. Or I want all resources starting with an A, which is a weird thing to do, but you can do it. So in the first rule, I'm just going to move all the conformance resources to a folder, to the package folder. I'm going to move all the instances to an examples folder in that same bucket. Then if I had any fish files, I could also run sushi over them and create JSON, but I don't have that in this case. I also introduced YAMLgen at FHIR North, but in this case, I already converted them, so I'm just gonna leave that for now. We're gonna take all the resources in that staging bucket and transform them to JSON. And what's implicit here is that the output is already the package. So the output folder. Then we're going to add a package.json file here. And we're also going to add the .index.json file. So that's with the action create package index. So we can leave everything that's here, but we're just going to add one more step because we also want snapshots in this case. So I'm going to add one more rule, which is generate snapshots. This is just the name I give it, which can be anything. Then I need to say, okay, take everything from staging, our staging bucket, and I also want you to put it back in staging after we're done. Target is also staging. And we only need to calculate snapshots for our profiles or structure definitions. So I think I can just say category profiles. I might need to check that against the docs, but And I'm gonna say action. What do we want to do with it? Is generate snapshots. Snapshot. I think this is correct, but let's test this later. So I'm gonna save that package.bake file. And now when we hit bake button here, you can see that we can no longer create it, but we have it there. And we can now run it here to test it. So this, when we hit run here, it's just a dry run. And you see that it's going to go through all our different steps, like move them, also our generate snapshot here. And this is the files that would come out. So it's moved our capability statement and all our other conformance resources to the package folder, moved all our examples to the examples folder, and it created a package.json and an index.json.
Sorry,
That sounds, yeah, please, Anne.
the TGZ file,
Yeah.
is that, I just didn't quite see it here. Is that automatically produced through this process?
No, you're right. So what I did now was just a dry run, basically,
Okay.
just to see that there's indeed the files created that we wanted to create. Let's indeed make that the TGZ file now.
Yeah, I kind of like that's why I would make a package, honestly, just because I want that TGZ file. I want to be able to validate and so forth. So
Exactly, that is the package. Yes, this was just to check whether my script was correct.
okay, sorry.
Yeah, so let's go to the packages, and we're gonna make that 0.0.3 file package. So I'm just gonna hit that same create new package button. We're gonna give it that 0.0.3 version number. Now with snapshots and .index.json, if all went well, but we're not gonna type that. And we'll see now when we go to the content tab, we no longer have those checkboxes because it's taking the entire configuration, how the package needs to look, from that package.bake file that we made, package.bake.yaml file. So now when I hit publish, it's gonna again show us that entire kind of command line output of what it made. And it's running through all those different steps that we had. And now let's have a look at that package. So just checking what files are in there. So the .index.json is here. That's made. All our different files seem to be in the right folders. The package.json is here. And just let's check again that profile on device. Here we have the beautiful views, but let's see in the XML. So now we still have the differential here, and it's only the differential. So I probably made a typo in my script. So that's unfortunate. Let me check whether I did that correct.
That's how you know it's real, right?
Yeah, exactly. Feel free to debug
Well,
with
I
me.
do. There is a question in chat from Thomas, and I'm wondering if,
good.
while we're just checking the script,
Yeah.
Thomas had the question: how many features of the bake this process are available to free users of Simplifier? So effectively, are there things that we're seeing here, or things that we haven't talked about that have that line regarding kind of that paywall or license wall?
No. So this is indeed a paid feature. So anyone who is using a project from the Canadian FHIR registry has access to this. But it's indeed something that comes with our licenses. Yeah.
Got it. So if you have like a one-off test that's outside of the Canadian registry and isn't taking advantage of the license, bake may not be available to you, but for those on the call that, because one of the values of publishing to the Canadian FHIR registry is to take advantage of features, it would be available that way.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's great that Canada is basically using this this nationwide. I'm just indeed filling the time until I have my.
I think the category might have been structure definition, not profile.
Yeah, that's could very well be the problem here. Oh yeah, so profile would have worked, but profiles and indeed structure definition would have been the other option. I think that's it. Yeah. Okay, let's try this again. So go back to our project here. Oop. I went to the package, but I'm going to create a new package. 0.0.4 it is. Now for real. Okay. Push. Okay, files. Profile on device. Snapshot. There we are. Good. Great. So now there is a snapshot, and that's, you see that's way longer. And that's also what's behind our initial hesitation to put this in by default, because you see that this file has just exploded in size. While the differential was just these few lines where we added one more extension. Yeah, this is the differential in that entire page. But hey, it's here and it's convenient for your users. So.
Yeah, and the takeaway from the process that we're doing today in the baseline is we're generating them, then we're copying over the output of the snapshot, then we're loading it into Simplifier, and it creates, I mean, a lot of waste for what should be an automatic process. So that was one of the reasons I thought it might make sense to kind of bring to this community. Thomas, I know you had another question on version control. Is there any version control information in the YAML?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Thomas is able to unmute, because I would love to hear a bit more what he means with version control. Oh, good.
Yeah,
great.
Regarding version control, that require lots of different kind of fashion in the IT world. But what I mean that actually, if we just like, as you mentioned, retired, informative, because actually for regarding, just to give you this assumption here, for the baseline, we have a one stable version which can be used for long term. But however, we still want to keep the momentum to move forward and have another, I don't call it a cutting edge, have a quite a lot of new feature being as informative information be put in. For this type of version control, if there's a kind of information can be put inside the YAML and it can be implemented in the package, which can be used by the end user. They understand what exactly that status for the specific package, and they would make decision for their project, the benefit. Thanks.
Yeah. So if I understand you correctly, you want a way to indicate to your users, like, is this package ready to use, or is it more experimental?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah,
okay,
that's
great.
kind of the general concept of version control. That's right.
Yeah, so this is not necessarily something that you need to use the bake pipeline for, but it's more something you would indicate with, are the PowerPoint still here? Yeah, it's more something you would indicate with the version number of the package. So right now we said 0.0.4. Generally, that means, well, we're still working to our first stable release, which would be the 1.0. Even more so if you would create a version number with like this dash preview or dash alpha or dash anything basically behind it, that's a clear signal that this is a pre-release. So only for the cutting edge, that people who really want to see what's coming up, but not the people who need to implement this in a production setting.
Yeah, the other way to do it would be to set status attributes on the structured definitions themselves and or the maturity level on the structured definitions themselves, because all of those three things together, along with the version, indicate the current state of your artifact.
So on that front,
I'd say,
oh, go ahead.
You would do that in addition to labeling the package version.
So let's say
Agreed.
we have kind of a, and this is truly the case with the baseline. We have some things that we've marked at version 1.0 and higher. Others, like, some of our immunization recommendation profiles, the version in our JSON for that profile is 0.2. Does the filter capability have enough flexibility to say, I want my package to include everything with 1.0, or maybe it's 1.5 and higher in a generated package, while we work on profiles that may not be ready quite to use for folks?
Yeah, I think it's technically flexible enough to use it, but keep in mind that the version attribute of a FHIR resource is basically a free text field. So it's hard for software to then kind of say, oh, 1.5 or higher. Unless you are very sure that you know exactly the format of all of your resources, which is of course something you have under your control, and you can, even like with FQL or something, you can easily check this for all your resources. Then I guess you could parse, it's just a FHIR path statement, so you could parse your version number and then write some FHIR path logic to figure out for every resource that it gives back a true or false, whether or not to include it in the package.
And that may be more, I mean, I think for us, it might be a fringe case. We want to be able to
Mhm.
publish both and have our users look at the version of each artifact
Yeah.
and make that determination, but it's good to know where some of the, like, the technical boundaries might come in. I see a question from Ken in the chat. For implementers that are currently happy with the current package publishing feature in Simplifier, is there any benefit to adopting the YAML baking feature?
If you're happy, well, not really, but as we've seen, it's for users sometimes easier if the snapshots are in there. For example, if people want to make a derived specification of your specification, and they're using FHIR shorthand for that, FHIR shorthand is implemented in JavaScript, and JavaScript does not have a snapshot generator. So they kind of need to rely on the other snapshot generator. So then if you have a lot of users who want to make a FHIR shorthand based specification based on your specification, it's easier for them if your specification already has snapshots. You can also
Some
tell them
tooling
just
too,
to,
right?
sorry?
Some tooling also likes to have the snapshots, like I think Inferno preloaded.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. Indeed, Inferno was another one. Yeah. So I think that kind of for Inferno, that probably kind of snuck in there as an assumption that they just thought everything would have snapshots, but it's not, kind of wasn't mandatory. And we were trying to keep packages small, I guess. Yeah. That's always a balance between like these kind of
Question on the FHIR shorthand. You said that you could use FHIR shorthand to check a version. So inside the YAML, you can put FHIR short, like, so you could say version and use whatever you want for FHIR shorthand, or is it just doing a exact match?
No, I think a few things go through each other there. Let's see. So in the bake pipeline, you can run sushi basically. So if I, for example, would have fish files within my project here, I could run at package creation time sushi over that, and then create a package with my JSON files in there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how you can use FHIR shorthand in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the filtering is really done with FHIR path. I see I'm taking up more time than kind of planned, but
I think that's a good sign, right? If people have questions, it's always harder when they don't.
Yeah, that is very true. Otherwise, it would be talking to a wall. I can briefly show you how to do this on the command line. So this is, I hope it's readable. I can make it a bit bigger. This is the same project, but then on my local folder. Right now, I do not yet have the package.bake.yaml file locally because I haven't synchronized since we've created that. So now I can create a package here with FHIR pack. So this is the normal way to, or the old way, depends on how you look at it, to create a package. It has made my acme.canada.tgz file. Let's quickly view this folder here. Where did that go on the screen? So here is my generated file. And this is what's all in there. So this is the default way to create the package. So no snapshot yet and no .index.json. Just going to delete these again. And now synchronize my project here, FHIR project sync. So now it's downloading 2 files actually from Simplifier. I guess the package.json has also been updated. So now when I run FHIR back, it is, you see that's running through the same steps that we saw also within Simplifier. and generating the snapshots, etc. So now when we open the package that has just been created, it is yeah, this is a Mac thing. There's my index.json. And when we open one of these resources, I think this one, for example, we make this look a bit nicer. JSON formatting. We'll see that there are snapshots in there. Yeah, that's what we wanted to see. So that's just for those who want to run this on the command line, automate this stuff.
Let me look back. I know Anne had to
Yep.
drop, but she had a question around the TGZ file. And a lot of
Oh.
us that are used, like for a lot of folks that are solely staying within the FHIR suite and they're claiming dependencies and using the tooling around validation that is already aware of those packages and can call them through the interface. I think it's not a big something that comes up as frequently, but for folks that are, for instance, using external tools where you need to be able to upload a .tgz file.
Yeah.
I just wanted to confirm. So is that you can after you package, it's an export functionality, just so we have it for folks who do end up needing it?
So yeah, we just saw it when we did it locally, but on any package in the entire FHIR world that has been made publicly available, you can go to Simplifier, you can go to that package. So here's our 0.0.4, and we can just download this ready to use. So now we have the TGZ file here downloaded on my local machine.
Perfect.
So you can download this directly from Simplifier. That's the manual way to do it, or any tool that knows about packages, like FHIR terminal. If you're on a command line, you can just say, okay, FHIR install acme.canada and then 0.0.4. And then it just knows to go to registry.phir.org, ask for this package, this version number. And then there's just a downloading mechanism, just like you would use software dependencies. So that's for people who are familiar with that. Also in Sushi, you can just set this as your dependency. In the IG Publisher, you can just set this as your dependency. There's no need to download that TGV file. But if your tool indeed doesn't know about packages or doesn't natively support that, then yes, downloading that TGZ file from Simplifier gives you all the resources that your specification contains.
Perfect. And I'll just make sure to follow up with Anne and make sure that the recording is available. Do folks have any further questions before? I think there's two items. One is a sense from the room, like, do we want to move forward with this process for our own CA baseline project? And then two is last 5 minutes. I want to make sure to give Joni and Joel some time at the end. So any further questions for Ward about before we move into kind of the decisioning piece?
Meanwhile, while people maybe think about questions, the last thing I just wanted to mention is that this bake thing is kind of a pipelining system that we're right now just using at package creation time. But what we foresee is that this will also allow us to build other pipelines where, for example, right now you can only run Sushi at package creation time. I don't think that's the most convenient time. It kind of feels like convert and directly publish and hope that everything went well. So we also want to make this available kind of on demand. So when you push a button, or maybe on every import of your fish files, we run Sushi over it and also put the JSON files in the project. Yeah, and other extensions that we're working on, making sure that we can use quality control, so the validation within that pipeline. So make sure that you only publish your package when it actually every resource validates. And we're also building in the Java validator and the IG Publisher just to make sure that you have all the validation that you might ever want within that. Any other questions?
Question before,
Yeah,
I
please.
suppose. Other than, I think, the kind of features you walk through the day and the inputs on in the YAML file, are you seeing any specific types of behaviors or filters that early implementers of this process are finding really that are really orienting towards? that we haven't talked about already?
Yeah, we built this the use cases that we built this for were a few. I think some of them came from you, which were like make sure that you have snapshots and that .index.json file. We also had some other people that wanted, for example, only the draft and active resources, but not the retired. Some people, when we get back to the versioning topic, some people use a versioning where they want all of their resources within the package to basically have the same version number as the package. So that's also something you could build in as part of validation or bake, where you check, do all my resources have the same version number? And is it exactly this version number? That's right now the
Manually
things.
going in, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. That's the main things I'm seeing right now. Yes.
Okay. Well, folks, if as you hopefully start to use this process, and if there are things that you're using more often than others, I'm hopeful this is a good channel to kind of communicate upwards and share. I do want to ask, based on what we've heard today, I have my own opinion as like in terms of where this could fit into our own processes and replacing some of the more manual steps. Is there any hesitancy that anyone's having about moving towards, using the default and maybe a slightly modified script that Lord shared today on our CA FHIR baseline project? Anything that you would need to know before feeling comfortable saying, yep, let's move forward with it. Let's get these snapshots out and move towards a more automated process.
Sorry, just one more question. Thank you very much for this great presentation and a very impressive feature for this bake application here. And my question is actually, I just want to confirm if there's any solid, reliable communication between FHIR and especially for the simplifier service provider website with the current, how to say, grammar there, hosted or whatever, those like IG publisher or those applications, to make sure they're all aligned together properly. If there's any kind of issues, all those issues could be resolved as soon as possible. Just want to make sure that communication is open or is active.
So between FHIR building simplifier and
the simplifier, and that's right. Yeah, I other two toolings. That's right.
Yeah. That's a great question, and this is an ongoing process. But FHIR has always been deeply involved with the FHIR standard and the FHIR standards development process. So we are big contributors to FHIR, the FHIR Infrastructure Working Group. I speak to Graham every week. And indeed, when we're maintaining two different software stacks, so he maintains the Java stack with many other people, we with many other people like Microsoft maintain the .NET stack. And the FHIR specification is pretty precise, but also at some point when you start implementing this, there is things that are being implemented different. And we're trying to align that as much as possible. We speak on that every week. If you find any issue with differences between the different tooling incompatibilities, let us know and we'll figure out whose fault it is and where to fix it.
Thank you very much.
So Thomas, I don't know if that's oriented around an anxiety with us kind of further utilizing this feature, but does that remove concerns with at least the CA FHIR baseline project utilizing this?
They both actually, because actually this is a reality. And if in the market, there's quite a different type of toolings can function the same, but can provide the same function. Always some kind of interoperability issues there or compatibility issues there, right? So just want to ask question. Thank you, appreciate help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, of course, for an interoperability community to have this between two different things. But I think in the long term, it's a good thing that it's not just one system that we rely on, but multiple stacks that implement this, so we figure out all the kinks and make the specification better. But it's ongoing work indeed to make sure that they stay aligned.
And ongoing work of implementers to identify when they're finding things that aren't aligned, because exactly. I think that's a big part of it too.
yeah, we really need your feedback. You're building FHIR specifications. I'm not. My day job is indeed talking to people and making sure that the software gets better. But we really need your feedback. Canada Infoway is a big customer of ours. We have ongoing meetings with Joni and Joel. So if you find any issues, bring it up to them, and they will report it in our system, and we'll get those fixed.
Perfect. Well, speaking of Jolie and Joel, I did promise them 5 minutes. So what I'm going to say is, folks, think on this, rewatch the recording. We'll circle back, and on our next profiling call, I'll make the final call for, we're going to move forward with this process, and what are the additional, if we do choose to say yes and not say no, what are the additional filters or pieces that we want? But without eating any more into their time, board, thank you so much. Honestly, I think I'm going to rewatch the recording a couple more times because this has been really, really helpful. And thank you for taking the time to engage our community on this.
Great. Thanks so much for giving the opportunity. I'll leave you to the rest of the meeting. Thanks.
Joni, it's either Joni or Joel if you want to kick it off. I think there was one last kind of item you wanted to just make sure we get on our agenda. You may be muted.
Yeah, I was looking for my unmute button. So many of you probably received an email a few weeks ago asking if you would be okay with us archiving some of your projects. So we just kind of wanted to touch base about what archiving on FHIR is. It's literally a status. But when a project has a status of archived, you can still read it, you can still access it, you can still download it. It can't be changed. And we won't archive anything without prior approval of the project admins. And basically about every 6 months, we're going to go and we're going to review all the projects that are out there. We're going to look and see if there's been any activity. And if there hasn't been any activity in 6 months, you're going to get an email saying, hey, are you okay if we archive this? If it does get archived and you do want to get back to change it back to being active, we can get that status changed back. So then you might ask why we're archiving projects. So the licensing for FHIR gives us a set amount of projects, 10. Anything beyond that 10, Canada Health Infoway is paying a flat rate fee. Archive projects don't count against that number of projects. So if we archive something, it's still completely accessible, it's still downloadable, but it's a way for us to manage costs and be respectful of taxpayer dollars. And then the other question that we get a lot of is, what is the future of the Canadian Fire Registry? So we don't foresee any disruption to this service. It's a significant component in development in Canada and for reuse in the FHIR standard. So it's not like we're trying to move away from FHIR. It's not like we're trying to not use it. It's just about managing costs.
I see, Lorraine, you've got your hand up. Was it on one of the items?
Yeah, it was a question about the implication of archiving. So, because as Ward mentioned, FHIR is both a development environment and a publishing environment. So if we've got, let's just say right now, the British Columbia PLR implementation guide is built on top of the FHIR baseline resources. And what does that mean for the standard status, normative, informative? I know we don't have those concepts yet, but in terms of using an archived package in something that, say, a jurisdiction wants to make part of their standards, like what's the implication for the standard status of the archive status?
So you're saying, like, if the Canadian baseline was in a state of archived and you're deriving from the Canadian baseline?
Or you want to read something from the Ontario e-referral in a localized referral implementation guide, and that project got archived because it was finished and published and nobody was changing it anymore.
Right, but that project will still have, each of the resources will still have a canonical URL. And when you're doing your deriving, you're gonna use that canonical URL.
Yes, but what's the implication of marking them archived for the standards status, I guess is my question. Are they still standards?
If I can chime in. So there is, when you mark something as archived, there is no implication to how valid that project is at that point in time. It is a standard and it will remain a standard for the foreseeable future. It's not like it becomes like something that's an old project or something that should not be used. Does that answer your question, Lorraine?
Yeah, I understand that that's how we're seeing it here, but I think that we will need to communicate that out because lots of jurisdictions won't see it that way.
Well, we can put more detail on the simplifier page about that status, but as long as as long as people know that you can still use that project, it's not like we're going to stop archiving, right? So they're two separate kind of separate issues in the sense that the meaning of the word archive should not mean anything other than on simplifier, it's not a live project. That's all we're trying to say.
Yeah, I think we need
not
to
under
carefully-
active development.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we're trying to say. Thanks,
Yeah.
Elliot. Thank you.
I think we need to carefully communicate the difference between publication status and development status, because what we're saying here
Sure.
is that it doesn't have active development,
Sure.
right? So
Sure.
we're archiving because we're not actively developing it. We're getting it out of our workspace to make room for more licenses. And then the publication status needs to be something different, I think. So making sure we're communicating clearly on that, I think is going to be really important.
And then we as implementers recirculating that messaging to our clients, to our project teams. Yep. And I apologize. Are there other questions? I have a hard stop. I can make Mike the host, but I just want to make sure on this front, if there were further questions, didn't cut off discussion too early. If not, if we can, one thing, maybe if we can make this slide deck available so that we can reference it on the forum, Joni and Joel, that would be even better. Then we have one more asset in addition to the recording regarding this topic to circulate to our teams that may have the same question that Lorraine had.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, folks.
Have a great Christmas.
Yes.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone. Yeah.
Cheers.